Hey, what's up, guys? Aarava here, and welcome back to the Pitlane Podcast for the Bahrain Grand Prix review, episode number 112. We use your host, myself, Aarav, Callum, and Tom. We did the instant race reaction on Sunday there, so if you want to see our really, right after the race reactions, then definitely check out the videos on Sunday. But this is the in-depth review then, and so we've got a lot of topics to go through. It was obviously quite a hectic Bahrain GP, but we're going to start off with that fallout from Leclerc's obviously demise, an unfortunate incident with where he lost a cylinder. It was actually revealed, the Ferrari revealed it wasn't a MGK or H problem like the commentators thought at the time. It was actually a cylinder, so he was running a V5 at the end of that Grand Prix. But I got to say, guys, Leclerc's response was very, very mature, and I think the entire the fallout from that is still very positive, despite it being such a heart-wrenching moment, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he did pick out. Obviously, we pointed out the positives of the fact that he did get his first Formula One podium, and he did have an exceptional weekend regardless. And Lewis Hamilton was quick to tell him that, and I think the whole paddock. I think he got a very good vibe from his interviews and everything. Everyone make him realise and sit up and realise that he did a brilliant job, and just because these things happen in motorsport, he is going to win a Grand Prix sometime soon, if not the next race on the calendar. So it was very funny actually thinking about it, because obviously we did the instant race reaction and we was very hyped about the fact that one of the best races in recent years, so much overtaking, so much this, and it felt so somber after the race. We were all so high about all of the overtakes and all the action, and yet none of us was really satisfied with the race, and it was because Leclerc did get robbed from that victory, and it was such a shame. But hopefully we can have the next race, he can win a race, and it be an absolute overtake fest as well.
Yeah, I mean, personally, it hurt Leclerc for a time, but I was still pretty high after that race. I thought, even though Leclerc thing didn't really get me off my high horse, I love that race so much. It's just so great. I watched the highlights back a couple of times already, and the highlights don't do it justice because of all the little things you miss. But I think Leclerc, generally speaking, had a 10 out of 10 weekend, and it's just a shame that it just didn't work out. Like I said yesterday, I think it seemed too good to be true to win it in pretty much
fairy tale.
The second race. So it will come, and I think once it does come, it's just going to be momentum. I think he'll really start feeling himself then in the Ferrari car. So I think patience. It's good. I think in a way for Ferrari, if they've got any issues or things that are going to go wrong, it's important to get them out of the way now, rather than like last season where things went pear-shaped towards the end when you want them to go, when you don't want them to go wrong. So get them out of the way early and hopefully get stronger as the season goes on. So I think for Leclerc, it's just about keeping your head up. Still his first ever podium, took home the fastest lap, first ever pole as well. So there's still positives there. So I think he's just got to try and keep
like Hamilton said, he's got a very long career ahead of him with many race wins, and
he's still a championship contender.
Yeah, and Hamilton said he looks forward to battling Leclerc in the future. So he's still got a bright season ahead of him, let alone future. So it's just obviously in the moment it just stings so much. But these things like all three of us echoed do happen in motorsport. It's happened to Hamilton himself, obviously. It's happened to Vettel. It's happened to everyone really who's ever fought for race victories in F1. But away from that fallout on that side of the garage of Ferrari, the other side of the garage for Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel. Well, we touched upon it a little bit in the reaction, but not that much because obviously it was overwhelming focus on Leclerc. But Vettel, let's talk about the start. First of all, he was generally struggling for grip anyway in the first stint, so it wasn't an amazing race for him in a sense of, he said overall the grip wasn't there for him, and he was struggling to actually match Leclerc, and obviously that's why he got overtaken eventually. But then, we talked about it. Is it why is the old Vettel come back? Because that spin he had, he said he was surprised and he just couldn't catch it anymore, and it's just so baffling. It's still baffling. We talked about it yesterday, but I'm still baffled by it. Like,
it's strange that it keeps happening.
I think he said he wasn't enjoying how the car felt all weekend. I think you can kind of see that. He just seemed to be struggling no matter what tyre he put on, fresh or old. Qualifying or race, just always was a quarter of a second or so behind Leclerc. Just never really went for him. And I still think I think we can't forget the driver that's there, and I think he will have stronger weekends. Again, I think it's kind of like Leclerc. I think if you're going to have a bad weekend, get out of the way now. Not like last season where it just completely ruined the second half of the season for him, the team, the morale. Get the bogeys out of the way now. And
but it still is a concern though, right? I
don't know. I think it's important.
You're in the top two team. You're in the top tier Formula One, and now it's what, 3-4 mistakes in span of like 3/4 of a period of a year, if you count from last year to now. I don't know. I agree with you. Like, you can't forget the caliber of Vettel. He's a 4-time champion. You've had so many amazing races where he's on top of the world on a different level to people sometimes in the race. But I just don't know.
Bearing in mind, we're going to speak about Gasly later on in this podcast about whether or not, and there are questions that we've got from our Patreon about Gasly, and he's been coming under a lot of flack, and he's had just 2 bad races in Red Bull, and people are already questioning him. And you've got to think about Vettel in the way that why is he not succeeding at Ferrari yet? Why has he not succeeded since he joined in 2015, and why has he not got a Formula 1 World Championship? And it's inconsistency. And Tom, it is I know what you mean. Yeah, get the bogies out the way. But if you want to try and challenge Mercedes and Hamilton, who don't ever have a bogey race, and even if they do, they still manage to score decent points or still manage to sit on the podium. There's this argument that if you want to be winning these world championships and challenging an absolutely indestructible Mercedes, who, even if their worst race in recent years was Austria last year, where they had a double retirement, and that was due to reliability, not on-track mistakes. Reliability happens, but I don't know. It's any younger driver will become under a lot more flack than what Vettel is now, and obviously the media is slowly starting to turn on Vettel because he's not putting excuses forward. He's just saying he was surprised, he was shocked, and conditions were awful for drivers, and there were mistakes. But how long can we excuse these mistakes?
I think I completely agree. I think the Mercedes is the silver machine that's just absolutely bulletproof. And of course, questions have to be asked. I think ultimately, I don't think I think the weekend itself just didn't go for him. Like I said it in the instant reaction to me, like in the video. It reminded me of Germany last year, because it felt like it just wasn't going his way, even if he'd driven good. For me, it started to go wrong even just in qualifying, when Ferrari messed up with putting him out in traffic, when they gave Leclerc a clean run in Q2, therefore compromising Q3, limited track time. And then obviously that kind of fed into the race as well, because in the first stint, sure, the first driver's preference, but Leclerc had a very comfortable gap over Vettel, and Vettel was under risk of being undercut by Hamilton. The team still didn't react. Hamilton easily undercut Vettel, and then again in the second stint, Vettel got brought in 1 lap too late, because he actually stayed out an extra lap after Hamilton had already come in. And you could see the second Hamilton, like, he was by Vettel when Vettel came out in the second stop. The tyre temperatures, I think Vettel just signed the pressure off the get-go. I think that's what got to him, the pressure, really. But they could have alleviated some of that pressure if they just brought him in straight after Hamilton. Literally the next lap, he would have still had a couple of seconds to work the tyre in and feel comfortable. But I think with Vettel, really, just a messy weekend. And I think, of course, the question is how many of those mistakes do you allow? And I think it's important for Ferrari to not treat it as a crisis just yet. But it has to be said, Vettel's not had the best start, but also you could say he was better at Australia, but he never really had the car to go anywhere in Australia, unlike Leclerc this weekend, because Ferrari had, there's all the rumours about the engine and what's going on with Ferrari in a minute, so maybe in Australia, Vettel had a better car, he could have done better, especially in qualifying. So, I think it's important to just not, if you're a Ferrari fan, don't get too carried away about it. I think it will come good, I think
that's pretty much echoing what Binotto said, because there's quite literally just now, like an hour ago, saying, let's not talk about the mistakes. We got to give the drivers the belief, because obviously the only way you win things is by going to the limit. But it just seems like Merck and Hamilton especially can always find the limit and just never dance across the line, whereas Vettel definitely flirts with that line and has crossed it a few times in the end of last season, and clearly at Bahrain did with a bit of a throttle a bit too early on that right-hander when Hamilton was overtaking him. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it's still rage on. We'll see how Vettel responds. Usually he is quite good at responding sometimes to criticism, but I don't know. I just hope for his sake it's not voodoo like at the end of last season. But speaking about Mercedes, and we talked a little bit about them obviously cashing in on the unfortunate demise of Leclerc. Hamilton said they still have a lot of work to do, and they did have a lot of work to do, because they really, apart from if you kind of take into account their strategy was a bit odd, they didn't really look like they were ever going to fully challenge Ferrari, like toe-to-toe, side-by-side action for P1. But saying that as well, I think, Cal, you were saying right before we started recording, it was a very weird strategy, because they put Hamilton on 2 softs. Yeah. And clearly that car didn't like that.
I mean, yeah, okay, fair play to Mercedes and Hamilton for saving this spare set of soft tyres for the race. Obviously, they saved it during qualifying. But it's still quite peculiar why you'd put on a tyre that had quite a reputation that wouldn't go further than 10, 15 laps and not a very good race tyre, overheated. And I think Hamilton did quite well. Once Vettel had overtaken him, he did stay onto the back of Vettel, which proves that maybe Vettel was even still struggling on those medium tyres. But why Mercedes didn't put Hamilton on a set of mediums in the middle stint, maybe they were lacking a set of medium tyres off the top of my head, like thinking of reasons why. But it was a very peculiar strategy because that did allow Leclerc to get 10 seconds ahead, obviously, after that round of pit stops and that stint. So what the gap would have been, because Mercedes were giving Ferrari a good run for their money, especially Hamilton. Obviously, Bottas, we've got reason as to why he was slow. But I was very intrigued to see where Hamilton would have been if he had a set of mediums for that middle stint as well, just to see whereabouts.
I think logically it makes sense in terms of I understand why they did it. I think you can kind of say in a first stint of a race, fuel's on board, they're qualifying, the tyres that we've qualified on, so they might not be in like the optimum range. We heard Red Bull talking about so much this weekend, saying like it's so hard to get the tyre in the perfect window around that track. And you can maybe say just because it's a worn tyre, heavy fuel, start of the race, just struggle to really switch the tyre on. But you think maybe once you put a fresh, set on and the car's a bit lighter, you think the car would work. But that's where it just went wrong. But I think the logic wasn't wrong or flawed from Mercedes to try it.
Just contra to what everyone else is
doing. So I don't think it was terrible. I think they went soft with Bottas, didn't they, in the last stint? So they kind of flipped around because Bottas used to use it at the end. I think at the end of the race. So they still tried with Bottas to see if that worked. And obviously we know Bottas, like you said, Cal. There's other reasons to it. But yeah, I just think with Mercedes, it was worth a go. It was worth a gamble. Obviously they didn't really have to pace. Although Hamilton did do a good job, and I think. What I think we're saying they don't have the pace because based off of Bottas, because Hamilton did have the good pace. So I'd be curious to see if Bottas hadn't had the issues, exactly where they would have been. But for me, I think if you're a Mercedes fan, I think you haven't got to be worried. In my opinion, I think they were thereabouts. I think China's going to be the game breaker because it's kind of 1-1 at the minute between Mercedes and Ferrari. So China will be like a good reference point.
Yeah, but this is what I mean when we talk about Ferrari. When Ferrari have a hiccup, Mercedes get a 1-2. When Mercedes have a hiccup, i.e., let's say Austria last year when they had a double retirement, who won the race? It was a Red Bull. This is what I mean with Ferrari. They need to pick up the pieces a little bit. And we spoke about this last year, I think, a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it's carrying on into this year. And I think it's a fundamental thing with Ferrari where they need to take every opportunity they can.
Yeah, I mean, people quick to kind of meme Vettel out for crashes, but a lot of things happen besides that, which kind of shows you the team still ain't there.
Oh, no, I mean, the team...
I mentioned the strategy errors all weekend long for Vettel. That could have easily happened to Leclerc, in a weekend where he had the pace. Just because it happened to Vettel doesn't mean it's excusable because Vettel spun. They could have done it to Leclerc and screwed up his qualifying or given him a set less tyres.
It was an accumulation of pressure throughout the whole weekend.
And also, the Australia weekend was a mess, really. They kept on the down low, but whatever happened with the engine gremlins, obviously that kind of occurred at Bahrain. We still don't know what exactly that is, but these things, they're there. Those issues are there still from last season. That's why Rubene eventually got the elbow, amongst a couple other reasons. So Ferrari need to sort this out because
it's still not there. It's still not there. In the modern V6 era, even the end of V8 era, I've yet to see Ferrari get like a year where they just look clean and they're together as a whole. There's always something that goes wrong, and it's usually a few multiple things, little things maybe behind the scenes, the management, the strategy. Yeah, they're still not really there yet. Well, only time will tell. They can really, clean this up, which is a shame because I think in pre-season we were talking about this good feel vibe for Ferrari, and obviously it's still there. The good vibe is there because of the way Binotto's reacted to everything. But like you said, things just still weren't operationally 100% bulletproof for how Ferrari handled Vettel's qualifying days. I guess that was the biggest blunder.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's the kind of top two fight. We'll get to Red Bull in a second, but really want to move over to the other British team, which is McLaren, and talk about them a little bit because we mentioned Norris, fantastic P6, and I tweeted out in the middle of the race, I think it was, or just after qualifying, like how convinced are people that this is actually McLaren's genuine pace, and I feel. I was very much supportive of McLaren, especially because Button used to drive for them, so I was kind of, giving them benefit of the doubt. But I've been hurt so much by McLaren now that I'm reluctant to believe yet. I need to see like 5 races of this pace. But obviously, other people, including you, Tom, are kind of more upbeat about it, which is obviously, fair enough. I'm just downbeat because I've been hurt so many times by them.
Yeah, I mean, objectively speaking, and like I said, I can't support Ferrari, but generally speaking, I've been objective, and I've watched McLaren have a lot of ups and downs. I said in the preseason podcast, during the 90s, they dipped for like 6 years until they came back up with Hakkinen. They have these weird like ups and downs, McLaren. And I think we all kind of agree, though, they couldn't really get any worse than last year. It would take something like Williams this year to really take the biscuit. And for me, I was like you, Arif. I'm still skeptical in a way. I think I want to give until Spain when upgrades arrive to see if they keep up as well. I think that's a big thing. McLaren keeping up. Last season, they scored some good points at the start of the season. Alonso and even Van Dorn as well were chipped in. I was watching the China highlights from last year's race, and Alonso got 7th in that race. They were still in or thereabouts, and it's kind of over the season they dropped away. But having said that, we said it, in the previews, Australia and Bahrain are completely different circuits, and they've been consistent, if not maybe better at Bahrain than they were at Australia, which is probably a good sign, based off what other teams saying that Bahrain's much more like other circuits. And I think how you said before going on air that Norris was kind of confident because they've got some tracks that might help their car.
Yeah, I mean, as we've said plenty of times, Bahrain's the first representative track, and I mean, McLaren and Norris were very open to say. At first, she was trying to be a bit sceptical about it, but it's quite obvious to notice that the teams have noticed this, that McLaren are good in a straight line, which is obviously a bit of a meme compared to what they used to be. But they have some straight line speed, and they did really excel in Bahrain. They've still got to understand the corners a little bit more, which it's a little bit strange to say that they did so well in Australia. So I feel like they are quick in a straight line, but they are quite good in the corners, but they need to just fine tune it. But we've got to talk about like Norris and Sainz themselves though. Like they had absolutely stellar weekends. I mean, apart from the dynamic between them is great, and it's the first time ever. I'm not going to lie, I was like the first time I've shouted at a McLaren when it was making an overtake. When Sainz was attacking Verstappen, I was fully I felt like a little Sainz fan over here. Good. It was really good feel vibe, and I was really annoyed when Sainz got that puncture. I'm not going to lie, it really pissed me off. But then to see Norris pick up from that and do the move, and there's a move that surfaced on Twitter where he did Gasly around the outside in the braking zone of turn 4 and somehow managed to sweep around the outside. An absolutely exceptional move. And Norris is really proving himself. He's had a bloody good start to this season, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I agree. I love the dynamic. I think Norris has grown into that role. I love Sainz at the minute as well. He's just, you can see like the interviews, even after the race, he's so upbeat, and he was like, I'm so proud of the team, how we were actually so close to Red Bull and even Mercedes this weekend. Like, I'm loving the vibes. They're not saying anything like we should be finishing in the points or we should be best of the rest. They've
done that from pre-season. They've not set any targets. They're just going for, we want to feel better and we want to be near cars in the race.
Exactly, and it's paying off. They're just taking their time. This race was the first race. James Key was actually part of the team. He was on the pit wall. And they've got Andreas Seidel from Porsche coming in soon. He was actually at the race as a FIA guest. But you can't say no. Like, they seem to be okay. Like I said, I think for me, they started off well. I think they've proven they've turned a corner already for me. For me now, the question mark is the development race for the rest of the 19 races, because it's a long season. And that's going to kind of verify where they really are. I think if they can keep up and keep pushing, and by the end of the season comfortably say, like kind of like Sauber last year, where you could say, they're definitely best of the rest. That's what you want from McLaren.
Because historically, they've always fallen away a little bit. Kind of like Toro Rosso in a way. They've started off strong last few seasons, and then fallen away quite dramatically, especially in the case of last year. So that will be the big question mark, really. But speaking of best of the rest, obviously Renault was hoping to be in that best of the rest fight, but it was a horrendous Grand Prix ending for them. Double DNF. Hulkenberg, they still don't know what's gone wrong with him. And then Cal, I think you said with Ricciardo, was it MGUK?
MGUK failure, which I think Ricciardo's all too used to from last year. And obviously he finished the Monaco Grand Prix with one. There was a little bit of controversy about Ricciardo not attaching his steering wheel after the race, but apparently that car was live, as in literally if you touched the floor and the car, you would be toasted. So there's a reason why he didn't put his steering wheel back on, and that's why the investigation was dropped for doing that, and that was why the safety car was released. So even with, I think they would have happily taken both Renaults off, and I don't think there would have been a safety car, I think. But as far as I'm aware, obviously they couldn't remove Ricciardo's car because it was live with a lot of electricity, and no Marshall fancy being fried on a nice Sunday evening. So yeah, Renault and its electricity keep bringing out the safety car, which obviously ultimately saved Leclerc and his issues, but.
And stop Verstappen getting a podium.
Yeah, which is almost a bit of a middle finger back to Red Bull. But
I think even Horner saw that in the post interviews. He was chuckling at it, like, yeah, I see it.
Which is quite funny, but yeah, it's still absolute mare of the start of a year, really, for Renault. There's so much hope and praise around them, and after 2 races, they've got pretty much nothing to show for it. And it's a shame, really, because they keep doing this thing where, okay, we're nearly there. Promise, we are really nearly there. Like, we're almost really nearly there. And then they've gone backwards this season when it comes to reliability.
They're with 6 points. Haas has 8, McLaren has 8, and Alfa Romeo 10. So they're way off the best.
And this is coming off the back of, I mean, we're talking about Ferrari and taking their chances. This midfield is ridiculously close. And now, as I look at the top 10, apart from obviously this is because Renault obviously dropped out, there's 8 different teams in the top 10.
Yeah. And before the failure, Hülkenberg actually had a mega race. He got up to what was it, P11 by the time he got through lap 1, and then he was on his way for towards P6ish. So, it's a real shame. They don't know what the issue is for Hülkenberg, but it looked like, and I think at the time Paul Di Resta was the one who said that it seems like that's probably going to be a whole basically a lot of the engine parts lost.
Yeah, that's
the dramatic way it sounded like it failed. It sounded like everything just clunked and
it's like
blew
someone
up,
threw a nail in the airbox.
Yeah, so
it just sound like a long fart, to be honest.
Yeah, that's going to be a real long collar yank for them for next race. Really,
it's not very good for Ricciardo though. For the start, it's not going to help his motivation when it comes to the fact that he's come to a brand new team, open for a brand new start, and he's not finished either of the opening 2 races.
No, but he looks where Red Bull is with Gasly, and I don't think he'll care too much.
True. Yeah,
maybe.
I think Red Bull look no better.
If Red Bull were winning races, he'd be like, oh crap. But Red Bull haven't exactly. I wouldn't say Red Bull have taken a step forward this year. They've just taken a side step, which is kind of what we predicted.
But you could argue that Renault have almost taken a step back as well. And
I think the engine's faster. The reliability is just as shit.
I mean, you can be as quick as you can, but you've got to see the flag. That's the problem.
Yeah, true. I'm just saying, it does seem like the engine. I mean, like we said with McLaren, their top speeds with the Renault engine, it does seem they've improved, and the engine's better. It's just a reliability question mark, which has been there since 2014.
He's just got to keep his hopes up because he got quite angry towards the end of last year because of these exact reasons. So
yeah. It's kind of funny because I remember, what was it, in the Netflix documentary, he was talking, he was like, do you stay with what you know or go into an unknown? Talking about the unknown being Honda and what you know is Renault. And it's like, yeah, so you stuck with what you know, engine failures.
Yeah, literally back at square one, which is a bit of a shame, but I'm sure that they will bounce back. They will start getting points on the board. And like Hülkenberg, and to be fair, Ricciardo had a very decent race as well. He tried to do that one-stop strategy. Didn't really pull it off, but I think Ricciardo might have finished outside the points if he did finish.
I think so as well.
But, it's a matter of ifs and buts. And also, that's worth mentioning about Sainz as well, actually, that we missed out. Even if he did overtake Verstappen, it would have been quite bittersweet because he had a gearbox issue towards the end of the race. So he would have had to retire, or more than likely would have had to retire in the circumstances anyway.
Yeah.
So we would have been even more angry if Sainz had made the move, was challenging the Red Bulls, and then had a retirement. So a little bit bittersweet on that one.
Praise misery early.
Literally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fully. And we talked about we mentioned Red Bull just then in terms of taking a side step, and we mentioned Gasly before. And that's really also a topic that came up in our Patreon Discord from Ramek Fee, asking, is it too early to worry about Gasly? Is he underdriving or is Verstappen overdriving? It's been a question that I've seen on my timeline of where is that Red Bull car for one? Because Brundle said it doesn't seem like they've exploited the aero as much as they have done in the past, and it doesn't seem quite there where Merc and Ferrari are. And then you look at the delta time between Gasly and Verstappen. Yes, Gasly said he's not comfortable with the car, So it's a case of he's really not that comfortable, and the car's more where Verstappen is, or is Verstappen just doing a stellar job at pulling the car up, a la like Alonso to McLaren in a way? I don't know. What do you guys make of it?
I think Red Bull's issues is making Gasly look a little bit bad, making it worse than what.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I feel like they would still be just like I think just Ricciardo there. In that seat would only be just up the road from Gasly. It wouldn't be that far ahead, but. The Red Bull have weirdly gone backwards, which is harking back to like 2015. Kind of, it feels like that sort of vibe at the moment where they're falling back.
Yeah, that was a really weird year for them. It was very meh, sort of like middle of the road. Like we don't really know what we're doing here. We're not near the front, but we're not near the midfield exactly. So sort of just like there.
It's like that was their only winless season in literally since 2009. So you got to. So it's. Yeah. I'm not quite sure, but Gasly said in an interview that he can't push the car 100% as he'd like. He's still trying to find himself at home. But then Verstappen was also given the same question, oddly, that is the car. Does he need to change his driving style, or does the car need to change to Verstappen? And maybe they've got this slight issue where their team leader, you could argue on whether or not Ricciardo was a team leader, but you've got to argue that Ricciardo had been at the team longer, so it would have been built a bit more around him. Maybe they've kind of just lost their way a little bit in terms of direction. I think that's what. That's possibly one of the reasons why.
A lack of general experience.
Yeah,
but Verstappen's pretty well trained now. 5 years in F1.
Yeah,
5 years.
He's no spring chicken, even though he's 21. I
don't know.
He's been.
It might be a case of like Red Bull have tried too much in a way. I'm trying to think like almost like when McLaren were like, oh, we'll do a revolution rather than an evolution with their car from 2012 to 13. Obviously not the same thing because Red Bull haven't done a revolution; they've just evolved their car. But I don't know. Maybe that like Cal said, the direction's been in a way where now they've got to a point where the car's so on a knife edge, even more than Mercedes, where. Verstappen's maybe, frustrated still with where the car, not where he wants to be. And then Gasly's even more woeful because he's stepping into this new environment. At least Verstappen might have been used to a few foibles and nuances with how the car reacted last year. But Gasly's stepping in from what seemed like from his interviews a bit more of a comfy, stable Toro Rosso that he could manipulate the way he wanted to. And then you've got this knife edge on a rocker Red Bull that he says he's just a passenger of.
Well, Verstappen said he didn't have one clean lap in the race at all. He said every single lap he was on a knife edge.
Well, there you go.
He was either oversteer, understeering.
Well, clearly oversteer was there because he span it on the lap in.
Yeah, there's that as well. But this is what I mean. Like I do, because even if you think back, let's think like back to Hamilton at McLaren. Like as much as the car was built around him, like they never had that. There was always kind of there or thereabouts, but not fully there. And I feel like it comes with a bit more experience before a driver can fully tell the team how a car needs to be, like versus obviously Ricciardo's been in the team. This is his 10th season, pretty much in Formula 1 because it was 2011.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm making up something here, making a bit more, but it does seem that like if you lose someone with that much experience,
it's
with
definitely
that many
a hit
cars,
in terms of how you do the setup work. That Gasly will have infinitely less info and knowledge and experience than Ricciardo, so I get what you mean in that sense. And then I think combating that, adding that onto Red Bull developing a car that maybe is on the edge, you need so much experience then to take a car like that, a la Mercedes, let's take them. Last few years they've had such a diva of a car and they've had a great pairing of, back then it was Hamilton and Rosberg, both very experienced drivers, very, determined drivers to beat each other, working on the same car to kind of, control that diva. And Red Bull just don't have that.
Mercedes say every weekend that from Friday to Saturday to Sunday, the car changes so much. But Sunday, the car's fine. The car is good. And that's the experience within the team.
I think to answer the main topic, I think Gasly is looking good. I think it's early to say. I think he's okay. He could do better. But you got to give him some time. Verstappen is the man at Red Bull, and it's going to take a little while to get that. I think, if you compare like Ferrari, for example, where you say Leclerc's already stepping on Vettel's shoes, I get that comparison. But it's a little bit different in my opinion because I feel like it's a bit more... Ferrari was more well built for Leclerc to step into. I think Red Bull weren't really ready for Gasly to move up. They said that he wasn't ready to come up this year. and I think it's going to take a little bit longer for Gasly. I also think, I said it in pre-season, Red Bull give me McLaren throwbacks because they're barking a lot about things they expect and Honda being good and things they're hoping for, and we haven't seen anything yet.
Well, they got the podium. McLaren.
Yeah, sure, but
let's not forget that. It's only the second race of the season, so they could turn up to China and be a lot better.
Of course, absolutely. But you could also argue the podium was out of Ferrari maybe not having
of course.
The right
There's
weekend.
A lot of
it was a
nuances, obviously.
Because him getting the podium there was no different to Mercedes getting a 1-2 yesterday. It was just down to other people dropping elsewhere. Of course, you got to be there to take it, but my point is, they don't seem to be as quick as last year.
Yeah.
No,
for me, I agree.
Especially this weekend, they really did not see, like, I thought they were going to be so close.
It sounds like we're all suddenly like deciding the whole season on this one race, but this is the thing everyone's been harking about is representative tracks, and we can say that Red Bull got a podium in Australia, but
so the
only thing we can guarantee from Melbourne, that other results from Melbourne, is maybe Red Bull might do quite well in Monaco, for example. It's stuff like that.
They'll do in all the classic
Singapore.
Red Bull places.
Exactly.
The usual Red Bull places.
If the car aerodynamic is even as good as they say it is,
yeah.
We think it is.
And this is the thing: we don't want to predict the whole season from this one race, but we've got a very good now idea.
It's definitely a question mark.
Yeah,
but for example, into China, we should expect them to, for example, be fastest through Sector 2 because that's where all the downforce is, for example. But if they're nowhere near that, then you kind of ask the question of, so where's
where's the performance? Where is it? Yeah, so there's definitely a question mark of if that Bull's a buck and bronco right now at the moment, pretty much.
It reminds me of the 2017 early season Red Bull when they literally had a bare bones car and like you could tell something
came
right.
Trying to build a lot of work. Yeah. To get back.
That's quite a fair comparison, to be fair. It does maybe feel like that, where they need to kind of understand the regs a bit more. But that's the thing. If they want to start winning championships again, they need to understand it before the season rather than during it. Which Mercedes and Ferrari are doing quite well.
Yeah. Well, we talked about a close midfield fight. Let's talk about Alfa Romeo, because at the moment they're sitting best of the rest. P4, 10 points. All scored by Kimi Räikkönen, though. And Räikkönen really is showing that he's still not lost his muster. You know, I've talked about it. You know, I wished Kimi well this move because I still think he's got some pace. Obviously, in the Ferrari, it was just a different scenario in terms of versus Vettel. But now he's free of the shackles. He can just do his thing. And he was really on fine form at Bahrain. I think, Cal, you were very impressed by all the moves he was making.
I literally watched the video. A video got uploaded to YouTube earlier on of all the start and all the moves and like pit stops and everything. And Kimi, you can tell he's in his element because he's got no pressure from Ferrari, he's got no media pressure, no pressure from fans. He's just turning up on Sunday and having a race, and he's really enjoying it, and he's performing well. Like some of the moves that he pulled off into turn 10, he did a double overtake on Toro Rosso's. Andy went up the inside of Magnussen into turn 10 as well, which was a really sweet move. And he also nearly challenged Norris at the end for that sixth position, which he said in an interview that he was struggling. But it also showed, because if anyone watched the paddock pass, he was motor mouth. He wouldn't stop talking, which is very rare of Kimi. Very, very strange. But on a serious level, he's really in his element, and he's really enjoying that Alfa in its pace. And I hope Alfa keep it up, because it's really nice to see, again, a different team in the midfield bringing out the results. And hopefully Giovinazzi can get on his tail, because otherwise Alfa will be
P11, so he wasn't too far off.
Yeah.
So it's a good feel. It's definitely a good feel. I think it's exactly what we thought would happen. You know, Kimi seemed happier as a person, and like you said, he was definitely not the same Kimi in the interviews post-race. So yeah, I think he's just enjoying life. And Alfa, obviously, they brought they had an issue with the updates they're doing pre-season. They tried to correct it. Seems like it's worked really for them so far now, and they can build upon that. So going to China, you know, that was it? It was a pretty good race for him last year, I think. I'm trying to remember back to what happened last year.
I watched qualifying, and they brought up the rear of the grid in qualifying. I didn't watch the race
China.
Highlights. Yeah. It
was so long ago, I can't remember. But I would think this year they could be quite good around there.
Big step up. It would be a big step up, more than likely.
Well, yeah, I mean, even last year, like the car they started the season with was nothing like the one they finished the season with. So.
Oh yeah, of course.
No, yeah. I think obviously I just hope that Giovinazzi, because I mean, obviously, like if you compare qualifying results, for example, obviously Kimi was in Q3, Giovinazzi was out in Q1. So I don't. As long as obviously, I think everyone's kind of excusing Giovinazzi. I mean, he's had 2 races in Formula 1 prior to this season.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I bet he can't wait to go back to China to alleviate the last time where he dropped it in the wall twice. But he looks like he's slowly building, and to be only just outside the points, bar the Renault issues, he was still getting his elbows out, and fingers crossed he can get scoring points, because I do think Alfa are a solid contender for P4 this season.
Yeah,
from what
it's
we've seen
looking
so
good.
far.
And one of the other teams that was hoping to be in contention for P4, but after this weekend, you don't really know if they're gonna be able to do it consistently. Is Haas, because they had great qualifying. I mean, great one-lap pace, amazing one. But I was like ready for Haas could attack a Red Bull maybe in that race, and then. Well, Grosjean had his issue, but then Magnussen later on in the race he just said it was a hopeless car. He didn't know what went wrong at all. Like,
yeah.
What's up with Haas? Like we said, what's up with Red Bull? What's up with Haas? Like again, they just have that flip. Like I'm not surprised by the flip flop because we predicted it, but why is it happening?
It's 2018.5.
Yeah.
It happened in
really
2017
baffling.
as well, though. They just bounce around.
It's very baffling. It's very, very bad. Yeah, I don't know what to say because there is no reasoning. Like even Haas don't know why.
I mean, Magnussen is driving above and beyond at the minute. He's doing a mega job. He is the team leader. Incredible job. I mean, that P6 was just incredible. Maybe the conditions probably maybe affected them the most. That's just theorising, being quite hypothetical. And obviously tyres is, if you don't understand the tyres at all, and if you don't understand all 3 sets of tyres, then you will be hopeless and you will drop back because your strategy will just go down the pan. But I don't know. It's very, very peculiar. I mean, Grosjean's side of the garage, he had just a dreadful weekend when it came to it. And I mean, you could give him a little bit of sympathy about the issue he had in turn 1 or on lap 1. But don't get the 3-place grid penalty, then you won't be in that position in the first place. That's just a sad reality of it. You've just got to don't put yourself in. You make your own luck in this sport sometimes. It's very, very difficult. I mean, I think China will speak volumes on whether or not it's this flip-flop season, or whether or not maybe either A, Australia was a one-off and they're actually a lot slower than what they think they are, or B, more than likely it's going to be they're just going to be all over the place, and it's going to be a matter of understanding their car through the season.
Yeah, so I can't wait for them to be right at the bottom of Monaco like last year, because I think it's following the same pattern in a way.
I mean, they'll have to do really well to be Southern Williams, let's be honest.
True. Well. I mean, you move on to them, the last 2 teams. Racing Point had a very quiet race, really. Obviously, Stroll had the issue with Grosjean at the start, and Perez, I don't know, I didn't even see the reaction really much from Perez. I mean, it was fair play. He got the job done, got some silent points.
Claimed that's their worst track of the season.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
Oddly.
okay. So maybe good things coming.
I'm not sure how much I believe him on that.
Right.
But yeah, I'm gonna take it as he said it for now, but I don't believe that's the one.
The fact that they managed to get points is a little bit jammy, more than because they didn't deserve. In the same way that Verstappen nearly got a podium, he wouldn't have deserved the podium. In the same way that Perez, he said he really didn't deserve that point.
Cashed in on Renault fumbling.
Yeah. So he just kind of snuck in there, got the points, and
he said himself. He said he shouldn't have got points, but with the Renault WDNF help. But he says he was chasing down
Albon.
Yeah, that's the one. So maybe got something.
Yeah. Very strange weekend. Just very touch. I mean, if there's anything else to speak about Racing Point, apart from the fact that maybe there is the slowest circuit, but we'll see if we can call their bluff on that one. Because not sure. But just mention Toro Rosso very quickly, who also get a double points finish. And can I just say, just with the rookies, this is like we've had a lot. I've watched the sport for almost over 10 years now, and every single year I don't really get excited by the rookies at all. But this is the first year where I've been seriously excited to see some rookies come on the grid and actually perform.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people are liking the look of Albon. Like his racecraft was really good around Bahrain. I think he had a really good thinking mind about some of the moves when he was battling, his teammate and battling other cars that were a little bit faster, maybe, choosing when to make the move. And obviously he came through. In his interview, he talked about how difficult the conditions were with the wind. So I think as a rookie, he's done a fantastic job to control that car around that tricky condition circuit race and get points. Obviously, Kvyat unfortunately got punted out.
He should have been in the points as well, yeah.
Yeah, he probably should have been in the points. So I think it could have been a solid race for Toro Rosso. I'm just looking forward to seeing how Albon develops as a driver, really, I think.
I never realised how, shy he is. It's like talking to a mate. Like a shy mate.
He is very much
He's the most relatable driver when it comes to like the way he speaks.
Every interview I've heard, I feel like literally you sat at a pub with him and he's talking about like a race he just did the other day. Like, oh yeah, it was okay. Yeah, oh yeah.
Same with Lando as well, though. Like, he's just joking all the time. I've never seen an interview where he doesn't crack a smile or joke about something. There's just such a feel-good vibe. I mean, the thing they did on Sky F1 with the three of them doing the karting.
The thing I'm thinking about
is
when they're talking with Rosberg and they were like, what's the thing that's improved most about McLaren? And Norris just goes, the drivers for sure, definitely. Yeah. It's just a bit of a quip. And it's a nice chill vibe.
There's a feel-good vibe about the whole grid this year, I've noticed. From the first 2 rounds of the season, there's just a genuine... I think sometimes it is nice to get rid of some of the older lot because it does bring a little bit more social media presence sometimes, as much as we'll miss Alonso, and as much as he'll probably be back on the grid next year. Now he's realised that McLaren are all right now. No, there's just something that I picked up on from the first 2 races of the season. There's a feel-good vibe around, and it just feels like the grid is so much better than what it ever used to be. Like there's a lot more talent than previous years, from what I can see.
Yeah. Speaking about talent or lack thereof with the Williams performance, is there a lot to say about them? I mean, another test session for them. They had a bit of a battle. Russell said they were allowed to race. I don't know if you can really call it racing, but I mean, there's not a lot to say really about Williams. They're just doing their thing, getting the testing in, and we'll see if they ever pick up pace with upgrades at some point.
We'll talk about them come Spain, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's hard to really. It's hard to mention them in the podcast, to be honest.
But they said themselves, up until Spain, it's just test sessions.
Yeah,
Spain,
so
they're not bringing any upgrades either.
So they're trying to understand their car.
They're not going to make any forward progress without any upgrades. And obviously, they're not going to make any forward progress without understanding their car. But even still, I mean, they must be treating it as test sessions when they have... Obviously, Kubica starting on medium tyres and then putting in before Russell and stuff like that. And Kubica said that maybe the gap wasn't representative of what it actually should have been to the rest of the field, like why it was so far behind. But even still, it's Williams. It's a once World Championship winning team, and they have been a downfall. But yeah, they need to understand that car pretty quickly. And it's merely for Russell just getting to the end of the Grand Prix and understanding how to be a Formula 1 driver and how to just go about doing a race.
There's one little thing, maybe, is Russell's actually driving for Mercedes in the rookie test this week because because of the rules, technically, he's still classed as a rookie because he's only done 2 Grand Prix starts. Mm-hmm. So in one way, that might be a little, Russell can try the Mercedes out this year and then go back to Williams and be like, okay, this is where you're losing time.
He's going to have such a shock, isn't he, when he gets back in that Williams. Or when
he's going to go back to the engineering hut, mate. He's going to point out everywhere, this is where we're losing time, this is where we're losing time, this is where we're losing time. But it's, I don't know, tiny maybe positive for them in terms of that little test might just give Russell some knowledge to give back to Williams of where they're losing the most time, maybe.
I'd love to sit him down.
To the Williams garage after testing the Mercedes and he's like, okay, guys, this is what we need to change. Everything.
Yeah, we need a Mercedes.
Just knock the car down and build it up from the start. Okay.
He has a picture of the car. He just points to the car. Just goes. That's what
one of those. The one. The silver
3D
thing.
print.
Can we have that?
3D print it. We'll drive that. Just.
I genuinely love to sit down and interview him after he gets out of that Mercedes and goes, so how is it? And he goes,
what do you think?
God. Is it any good?
Or have an interview with him straight after his first lap in FP1 at China with the Williams and go, so how's that, lad?
Oh my God, it's a pile of shit.
Yeah, that would be very intriguing.
So would you like a shopping trolley for Baku?
Yeah.
Would that give you more...
I think we got to the portion where we're just now taking shots at Williams. So I think we'll end the podcast there.
They're already dead.
Yeah, they're already dead. Let's have some mercy and stop taking the piss out of them. So let's end the podcast then. If you guys did enjoy it, then be sure to hit that like button. Let us know what you thought about anything we talked about in the comments below. Obviously, as you would have seen on screen, we are available on all audio platforms. We are new around here, so you can catch us on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, and support the podcast directly by either. If you like what we do, you can also sign up to our Patreon and support us directly through there. Or if you do want a racing chair, if you like Office, or if you want to play the F1 game, you can check out GT Omega and use the code PitlaneF1. That will also help us out directly there. But you guys seem to be really enjoying this dynamic of the instant race reaction and then the in-depth one. So appreciate that feedback of it's a positive change for this year. So look forward to the next ones. And I guess we'll catch you guys next time for the off-race weekend. Any news that comes out of F1, I'm sure there will be ahead of China, especially with Ferrari maybe doing an inquest into what went on and whatnot, and anything else with Renault, perhaps, if they can finally find what on earth went on with Hulkenberg's car. But till then, guys, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.